Welcome to Andrea Loves Everybody.
Hey.
You're here because I love you. Today I'm joined by Kelsey Gruebnau.
Oh my gosh.
How do you say it?
Gruebnau.
Gruebnau? Oh, I messed that up real bad.
Don't you know?
Oh no. And Bobby Hill, got that one.
Yeah, that's easy.
Hey.
Yep.
And I love you guys a lot, and I'm
Good.
so glad you're here. And I like to start this podcast off by telling you guys something that I love about you.
Oh.
So, I really love hanging out with both of you because you're really fun and you're funny and you're nice to me, which is a huge plus.
It does help.
Yeah, but also like I think you guys you have a way of just kind of like making every situation fun. Like because I hung out with you, I think I met you in Milwaukee after I did a guest spot at a
with
show.
Eric Schwartz.
Yeah.
I was opening for Eric Schwartz.
Yeah, and that was so fun. And like, I think Kelsey, if you hadn't been there, I probably wouldn't have gone out and hung out with you guys.
Because they look like rapists.
Well, because
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
What is it?
Strange
What is it? The
dude.
penises?
I mean,
that's
the bald
really
heads, the penises, both things.
Penises are a huge problem for me.
Yeah, they're for everyone.
They're
actually.
terrifying. They're just,
including the owners of them.
what's it doing now? It's like an alien that lives
Ask
with
that
you.
question every day.
Aw.
But you wouldn't have come to.
I wouldn't have hung out. Yeah, because like it's a one thing, or especially when you're like a female in comedy, when you're like meet new dudes, you're like they seem cool, but when are they gonna touch my butt?
Yeah,
you know?
we would have not thought any differently or poorly of you for deciding not to.
Yeah.
But Eric and I were both like, we get it. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't want to hang out, we totally get it.
Well, you guys are so nice, and honestly, like the way that you guys talk about women in your comedy isn't
Sure.
like degrading or like horrible.
Sure, yeah.
So that also makes me feel more comfortable.
I mean, I'm very specific. When I do speak negatively, it's very specifically about my ex-wife, and that's the only one who ever.
Look, just because she's a
everybody else is great, but like she's always the outlier of y'all. You know, what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like
it's just like-
except for this one. This one is the only one that we got to look out for.
she's born with horns. It's not my fault. I don't.
You know, just the one though. Everybody.
That's great. I always find like it's better to hate specific people for
Yeah,
specific
yeah,
reasons than just like generally.
It's definitely not because she's a woman. That's not
Yeah.
the problem. She's got her problems are not about her gender.
That's the nicest thing I've ever heard a man say about a woman he hates. That's usually it's like all women are all women are crazy. It's like no, just this one's horrible.
She's got specific issues.
That's so. Speaking of relationships, guys, we want to talk about love.
Yeah.
I do.
So, quick, like, how long have you guys been together, and how did you meet?
We are coming up on 3 years in May.
Since we've met. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, 3 years since we met in January. We met actually, we're coming up on the anniversary of that. Ooh.
Oh, it was right after New Year's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want? Should I
Recap.
You can tell the
Yeah,
story.
tell me the story.
So
This is your bit.
this is my bit. Doesn't the woman always tell the meeting story? I feel like that's kind of our right as a gender.
I've got versions, you know?
You do. My version's better.
Yeah,
though. So let's see. I was hanging out with a Chicago comic, a female friend. I guess I could just say her name. It's not weird, right?
Of course.
So I was hanging out with Sydney Davis Jr. Do you know?
I don't know her. No.
Junior.
I don't know how you have two juniors after your name, but that's what Facebook says.
Listen,
Anyway.
you can be comedian T. Murph. You can be Sidney Davis Jr.
So, okay, so I was hanging out with Sydney Davis Jr.
Thank you.
And we were just having coffee and chatting and didn't really know each other that well. And she was talking about this guy that she had, known, been friends with, intermittently gone out with. And she goes, oh, you guys would get along. She said, you're into that polyamory thing, aren't you? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, I think he likes that too. And I was like, oh, okay. And she didn't know why we didn't know each other because we were both Chicago comics and just hadn't
Arranged marriages, that's
you know when you meet a gay, you have like a gay friend and then you like have another gay friend and you're like, oh, you guys would love each other, and they're like, just because we're gay doesn't mean. But she
That's for sure how they do it too.
She pulls up a group picture and I go, oh, which one is he? And she goes, the one that looks like the giant baby. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's interesting information.
Way to pitch me, Sydney.
Fast forward to later that night, I was with Matt Drufke, by the way, the best person in the world.
I like him so much.
One of the greatest humans on the planet.
I mean, yes. We're talking about a love podcast. I just had to say Matt Drufke is my hero. So I'm hanging out with him. We go to a show at the Whip Theater.
Yes.
And rest in peace. And Bobby comes up on stage. You're hosting?
Yeah, I was hosting that night.
Hosting the Whip Theater show. And I text Sydney. I said, guess who I just ran into? And
big giant baby.
that big giant baby man. Bobby then has a good set, but runs the light. So I'm
colorblind, okay? And the light was different that night from the night before, and it was a red light that was flashing in the background that I couldn't see in the darkness because I'm colorblind.
So in between shows, I of course have to go up to him and say, "Hey, we don't know each other, but you look familiar. I feel like we have a bunch of friends in common. Also, you run the light, so what the heck?" And
I was like, oh yeah, I've seen you on OkCupid before.
So, we both have
I like honesty.
We both have very distinct looks, right?
Yeah, I had seen Kelsey at a show called Stand Up in Chicago 2 weeks before with another comic. And I had seen her on OkCupid before that. And I was like, oh, that girl's cute. And I hadn't written a message to her because I think I saw her while I was riding the train or something like that. And that's a weird time to be even on OkCupid, to be honest with you. So I was not going to stand there and write a message. So, but I saw her a couple days later at this show with another comic. And I was like, oh, she probably is with that comic. I wouldn't go up to her and try and approach her while she's obviously out with this guy. And then I didn't see her after that point. And then 2 weeks later, she's at this show I'm at calling me a big giant baby.
Well, so that's what happened. He goes, oh, I recognize you from OkCupid. And I go, oh, yeah. I go, and you're the big giant baby guy. Because,
to my face. Within 4 minutes of meeting me.
It was like, you're the guy.
Within 4 minutes, you're the big giant baby guy. And I'm like, what?
He looks so horrified. I've never seen a more horrified look on someone's face. I thought it was like a bit. I thought she was telling me he did a joke about how he looks like a giant baby.
That's my catchphrase. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's the giant baby. And then it became very clear he'd never heard that before in his life.
I used to shave my whole face. I used to not have any facial hair or anything. And so immediately after that, I grew a beard. I was just I'm emotionally scarred already. And then I've shaved 3 times since then ever.
So, and honestly, I think 4 or 5 months into our relationship, I said, do you only have a beard because I told you look like a baby? And he was like, yes.
Honesty is a huge part of our relationship.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah. How do you, so that is one of my questions is you guys are poly. And I think that that's a concept that's really difficult for a lot of people to understand. Can you just talk about how you make that work and how you prioritize your time, not only with stand-up and these other goals that you have, but with each other and other relationships?
So it's we're in a unique situation because I find that a lot of poly people come to polyamory together. So they're in a relationship, it's monogamous, or they're married or something, and then they go, hey, we're going to open up our relationship. Bobby and I both were poly before we met each other. Which it's hard to find people like that because you don't wear a sign on your face and that says, I'm into open relationships.
Yeah.
So unless you have a conversation about it or you use online dating, it's hard to tell.
The idea of solo poly is a thing that's not that's not a thing that that's a word or a phrase that not a lot of people are even familiar with, right? I'm single, but I'm polyamorous.
Yeah.
oh, you're just dating. Like most of the time when I explain that, like when I was single and dating and I would tell someone I was polyamorous, they go, what does that mean? I go, well, this is how I date. They go, oh, so you're just dating then? And I go, yeah, I mean, I guess, sure.
I mean, it's like telling a bisexual person that if they're not dating a male and a female at the same time, that they're not bisexual anymore, right. Which doesn't make sense at all. So how do we, how we manage that with our time? I mean, we don't have a lot of time.
No. But who does have a lot of time though? Like everybody I talk to is like, oh, I don't have a lot of time, but it's just a matter of, for the way that works for me is that what makes me feel good or comfortable or able to give my time and attention to somebody or want to invest in somebody is having the freedom to also be able to meet other people that I like and want to spend my time around and want to enjoy my company who might like different things than this person does.
Yeah.
And so to be able to be honest about that and know that there are nights when I want to go see a band play somewhere that maybe my partner isn't into, but this other person I know is into that thing. And it's also a person who I'm attracted to. And so I was going to go to that thing probably alone and run into the same person who's also into this thing. So like, what are we really talking about at that point? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and so what, if we make out the other night, is that harming the thing if I'm going home? Not to me, it isn't, because I'm still going home to this person, right? So I think a lot of that really just depends on what your interests are. Some people find that a lot of their interests line up with the person that they're with. And so the interest in expanding from that or trying to meet different people isn't important to them. But that's why everyone kind of exists on that spectrum when it comes to relationships in the first place.
And just to clarify, like there are lots of different types of polyamorous relationships. Bobby and I are, well, I define myself as a hierarchical polyamorous, which basically means
it's a lot of college words for that.
It's a lot.
If you're listening, pull out Google and get ready.
So it just means that you have like a primary partner, meaning that like I want someone to like live with and spend my life with and plan life goals, but then I will have secondary, tertiary.
Still trying to fuck on the side though, you know? Still trying to do a little side
But some people do different things. Some people have like poly families where like multiple partners will all try and live together or at least like be equal, and then non-hierarchical meaning no one's like more or than anyone else. But there's lots of variations of that. But when he and I met, we had to talk about that a lot too, because I knew I was looking for somebody to like have as a partner. And that's different than having someone you just date, right? Like, making that sort of plan.
If we're going to talk about where we're going to live, like if we're going to talk about where we're going to live in the next 4 years or whatever, like that's a different decision than like we see each other when our calendars kind of sync up. You know what I mean? Like I like you a lot, but obviously we're both busy adults because we're going after things in our lives. And so like, hey, if I don't see you for 2 weeks, we'll just kind of text in between and then we'll get back together when we can. I mean, that's how a lot of people end up spending their time together. So, I was kind of doing that a lot. I just hadn't met anybody that made me want to think about trying to live with them or plan futures or all that stuff. So I met her and was like, oh, all right, well, here's somebody who I could try and do something like that with.
How soon into you guys like really meeting did you start to feel that way? Like, oh, this could be a person that I'm with for a long time.
She was unsure at first, but I was like, I'm down.
Like right away, you're just like this one.
Well,
like this one.
We met, and then we didn't see each other, and then she invited me out for a drink because she thought she had insulted me, and
but it wasn't a date. I had I wasn't.
She invited me out for a drink to try and like make me feel better.
Like, I called this person a giant baby. I should buy them a drink.
That's a guilt drink.
Okay,
it was a guilt drink.
So after that first time that we met, I went back to the green room, and she had already friend requested me on Facebook. So I was like, this girl digs me, and so. So I was like, if I get a chance to talk to her again, I'm going to go hang out with her for sure. And then she asked me out for a drink, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'll take a shower and shave up, and we're going to go out and meet this girl. And then we hung out. We talked into the night. I mean, we went to
a 4 a.m. bar.
Yeah, we went to the 4 a.m. bar to hang out and keep talking. We just kind of laid out our thoughts and theories and beliefs on relationships and what we thought about dating and what we were thinking about as far as futures go. And it was just like, why would you? I don't think enough people have those conversations early on. Like, why are you not having? Like, well, here's the thing: why are you not having those conversations early on? Why are you not?
Yeah.
If you're serious about trying to figure out what you're trying to do, why are you milking 4 or 5 or 6? To her, it was important because she's looking to see whether she wants to find a primary partner or if this is just going to be somebody that I just casually see.
Right.
And so, why are you wasting all this like coyness and trying to figure, like, what are you doing except wasting time? How much time do you even have here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I love that conversation being like, oh, this is definitely not someone that I'm going to be dating seriously, because we had a bit of a miscommunication.
yeah, well, I'd been dating as a solo poly person without any concept of hierarchical polyamory. I just didn't think there was I didn't seem to be meeting people who were fitting that idea of somebody who I'd want to really invest that type of time into. Fun people, nice people, had other stuff going on, connected in a way in which I like them and I like spending time with them, and but not like I would want to really have this person be a primary person in my life. But I met this girl who was like, oh man, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're from here. You also do comedy, so you understand comedy. So you get the idea of like what I'm trying to do. You're not shitting on me. You think I'm funny also. And you also don't mind if occasionally I go on a date with somebody else. Like,
Right.
holy shit, you might be a great person that might change my idea. And
The
like,
only downside is I live in LA and you live in Chicago.
and that was the only issue. She was home. She was at home visiting Chicago, and I was living in Chicago at the time. And she was coming back to Orange County to continue to go to medical school.
Not medical, graduate school.
Graduate school. Sorry, graduate school. And so I was like, oh, okay. So this, whether I want this to be a thing where I would pursue it or not, like it's going to at least be a long distance thing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Which it was.
I would say probably about a month. I came back in February for my birthday, a month after we had met, and it was like, oh, okay, we're gonna try and see if this is a thing that would work.
We went out on a Valentine's Day date to see Josh Johnson.
Yeah. And I made us shirts. I made us shirts that said, "This is not a Valentine's Day date."
This girl who is not sure she was into me. The girl who said that she was not sure she was into me made Valentine's Day shirts. Went out to the store and bought shit with her father to make Valentine's Day shirts that said, "This is not a Valentine's Day date."
Because okay. I'm okay with Valentine's Day. Bobby does not like Valentine's Day. So he was like, if we're going out on Valentine's Day, this is not a Valentine's Day date. So I made us shirts. I don't know.
I was not going to have our first official date be a Valentine's Day date.
That's
Do you understand?
so funny.
I'm not going to ruin Valentine's Day for this woman. I'm not.
And we've never worn the shirts again.
We've not. We've never worn them again. So we went and saw Josh Johnson, who's a great comic.
Is he the guy that has that bit about the KKK chicken? Is that who I'm thinking of?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. He's got a great bit about the ceiling fan.
That's one of my favorites.
His ceiling. He's got a bit about his ceiling fan and how he's not a very manly type of guy. So it's a great bit. You got to go watch Josh Johnson. Anyway, we went to go see him. He was doing a one-man show. And we went to go see him, and it was kind of like, it's on now. So we were going back and forth for a little while. I had reason to go to LA anyway. I want to come back out here. I'd lived out here before. I was doing comedy now, and I wanted to kind of test the waters out here again.
Yeah.
And so I had two excuses now to come out here.
Well, and a place to stay. Am I right?
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. Solve that problem.
At my mom's house.
Yep, she was living at her mom's house. I was like, cool. Another group of white parents I get to impress. This is fun. And I'd already known about like the church cult thing where like she hadn't seen many black movies at all. Like she grew up in a very religious family.
Can we talk about your church cult real quick? Let's talk about that. I want to know so much.
My church cult. Okay, so
turn this part off, Pam.
no, yeah. It's not a cult, but where I grew up, people like my friends would be like, "Oh, the cult church," and I would be like, "Well,
it's like northern racist Christians." You know what I mean?
Fun.
Like,
so it's a mega church. Like the main auditorium seats 25,000 people.
Jesus.
And both my parents worked for the church, so I spent a lot of time there.
but they don't have any crosses in that part of the church because they don't want anybody to.
Oh, it's non-denominational.
Right.
What?
Right.
I mean, it's Christian.
Well, you can
but-
get in the most money if you kind of be like, it's
Everyone's
just whatever
welcome.
Christian, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
also no black people.
No,
That's-
it's not no black people. It's not no black.
Just the good ones, right?
So I don't know.
Damn.
I mean, so the north and northwest suburbs of Chicago are very well-to-do white people who try and do their best to get away from other well-to-do white people. Like, it's just like, there's towns that try and start their own town. They're just like, just the richest of the rich.
Lake Forest.
Oh, there was a town in the town I grew up. I grew up in Cary, Illinois.
Okay.
Woo-hoo. And there was a town inside of Cary, Illinois called Trout Valley, which is not a town. It's just like
a neighborhood.
It's like a neighborhood inside of a town that's like for rich people. And you literally have to have like a special sticker on your car in order to be driving around there.
I think on our third date, I made her watch Do the Right Thing with me. Cause I was like, if you're gonna Spike Lee, I was like, if you're gonna like date me, you're gonna have to understand where this comes from.
And I was terrified.
I was like, you watch Do the Right Thing.
I was terrified of dating Bobby because while I do not consider myself a racist person, I definitely grew up in a very like whitewashed sort of like
how
I
do you
didn't
get yelled at for watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? How? What parent tells their child Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is too black?
But like, to be fair, I did come to my parents when I was like a child and say I wanted a black baby, and they were very alarmed. They sat me down and told me that like I remember my dad being like, "Well, Kelsey, there's only a couple of ways that could happen,
and we don't approve of any of them."
So anyway. I didn't get a lot of exposure to that culture. Like, I literally didn't meet an Asian person in person until college. Like, that's the level of like not being, introduced to cultures outside of my own.
So I had some impressing to do.
So he was like, before you can come around my friends.
Her mom knew I was black in a picture. It's like them type of white people.
Oh, wow, like, really?
I'm a very passable mulatto person.
Right.
And like she looked at a picture and was like, "Oh, he's black, right?"
Damn.
And I told Kelsey they always know. They always
so crazy.
But she's great. I love her. She's awesome. She's coming around. If I can get her to stop watching Jeff Dunham, we'll be okay. That's my last.
Not me.
That's the last mountain to conquer.
My family watches Jeff Dunham at Christmas every year, and it's terrible. It's awful.
But see, Kelsey and I are together on this, and that's the part to bring it back to relationships and like we are together in defeating this thought process.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm not a fan of dating white guys. And it's definitely with my parents, it's just like, just so you know, this is a person I'm dating. And they're like, well, we're worried. And I was like, you can be worried, but I'm still going to date these people.
They're
I'm still
worried?
Gonna date. My mom she one day was just like, oh, I'm just worried about like cultural differences and like not being accepted. And I was just like, other people accept us. It's fine.
There's so many of us now, though.
There's so many interracial couples. I don't even understand why.
I was a novelty when I was a kid, but like now, I
can't even think of what cultural differences. like what is going to happen?
Team Beige is on the move. It's a khaki spring.
It's just like cultural differences is a good net way for people to be like, I'm nervous. And I don't know enough about someone that looks different than me to explain or extrapolate exactly why I'm nervous. But it's like a nice thing that makes you sound not racist when really you're just kind of like scared of someone that looks different.
My dad asked me, and I love my dad to death. Great guy. He'll hate that I'm saying this, but he literally asked me when I told him that Bobby was a mulatto. He goes, does he speak well? And I had to say,
yeah, nigga.
I had to say, Dad, are you asking me if he speaks in Ebonics? And he's like, well, that's not how I would say it. And I'm like, but that's what you're asking, right?
Well, and it's so funny for you to talk about your parents' like discomfort with race when you say, and like kind of discomfort with the other when you also told me that your dad has come out as gay. Mm-hmm. So like that.
Oh, you can be gay and racist.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you think that like
intersectional, but not necessarily.
But also, like that wasn't comfortable either,
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, like he seems uncomfortable with himself. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
aren't we all though?
Oh, that's true.
But it's also living in a place where people aren't different from each other.
Yeah.
And being different. I mean, when I went to prom, like it said boy and you were supposed to write the name, and girl and you were supposed to write the name. Like there was no, there's not like
boy or girl.
No,
or, hey,
no.
What y'all want to be today?
And like I went to prom with a girl all 3 times, and like legitimately parents in the line, like, as we walked out to the buses, we're glaring, we're uncomfortable, stop taking pictures. Like, it's
that's when you start taking pictures.
Like it was just it's just a place where there's kind of an expected way for things to be, and if you're outside of that, it's hard to have a strong enough voice, especially if it's not something you're particularly comfortable with in yourself. I mean,
you know how it is. We're in LA right now. Look at this room. Look at the people who are in here.
Yeah.
Like, how do you realize that you're the same as other people unless you get around them, right? And otherwise, you just have these assumptions in your head of like, oh, here's like, even people that are in LA, they talk about the Midwest like, oh, it's just the flyover states. Have you been to Wichita? Go to Wichita. Go see. I mean, it may suck. It may not. It may be partially what you thought it was, but how many ways are you going to find out that it's not what you thought it was?
Well, what's
you
weird?
know what I mean? Like, we grew up in the Midwest.
Yeah.
You know, it's not exactly the way you say. A lot of it is, but it's not exactly that way. And in a lot of ways, it's worse. But you don't see that if you don't go. If you never get around those people, you're just making assumptions.
Well, I think like the weirdest thing for me that continues to be weird for me is the idea that people build up that someone else can be so different from them that they can't connect on anything.
Right. Yeah.
And that's so weird because like I've been to other countries where like people, live very different lives, but they get my jokes. We can hang out. We have a good time. Like, it's just, I don't understand. Like, we're all so similar. We share 99.99% of DNA. Like, how can we not see eye to eye on
we
something?
Want to distance people from ourselves, honestly. And, so Bobby mentioned this briefly, but I'm getting my doctorate in clinical psychology, and I've spent a lot of my time.
You date smart chicks. That's dope.
Like I'm writing my dissertation on polyamory. Like that's like it's a little bit of an interest of mine. But I've spent a lot of my time working in prisons and in state hospitals. And
his head popped up. What? Say what now?
So exactly, right? No, but that reaction is like, I mean, people used to ask me when I worked at the prison, they were like, how can you like empathize with people like that? How can you sit there and give therapy to like murderers and rapists and things like that? And it's just like, most of them were honestly people that had done things a while ago, sometimes even before I was born, that were awful. Were absolutely awful. But we're people no different than the people I see every day walking down the streets. We're honestly some good, empathic, kind people that either ended up in a messed up situation, were disadvantaged from the time they were born, or, got mixed up in drugs, something crazy happened. Like, honestly, we used to talk about how most criminals are someone who had one really bad day. Like a lot of that is like, they might not have been in the best position to begin with, but some, like a terrible day happened and something happened, and now that will impact them for the rest of their life. And that us versus them, I've heard people ask me, like, after the stuff happened in Vegas and all these, they go to mental health workers and they go, how does this happen? Like, why do we keep letting those people have guns and things like, and I'm just like, those people, it's all of us.
And also often very on the lower end of the IQ scale, oftentimes.
So there is an IQ correlation with like people who commit crimes, and things like that for sure.
Which, I mean, that's an important thing because we're saying we're basically, obviously the people, I mean, everybody's done things that you could have possibly gotten in trouble for that you didn't. Everybody has.
Yes.
And so,
exactly.
And a lot of people that are in jail right now have done things that a lot of people I know have done that just didn't get in trouble for. And so, like,
you have to be smart to get away with things.
And so if you have a lower IQ, obviously the odds that you're going to get caught because you're not smart enough to figure out how to not get caught doing the same thing that everybody that we know has probably done at some point in time. It's like, so we're basically just locking up the dumbest people is what we're doing. You know what I mean? And then we're being like, those people. Oh, you mean the people who are the dumb that we should probably be doing a lot to try and protect or take care of or look out for or find a way to treat better? You mean the dumbest of us? We should probably be concerned about them and not call them animals.
Well, is there a large group of people there that you see, or is there like, what's the percentage you would say that you don't think have empathy or you don't think could
Oh, like sociopaths, like when we use that term, very small percentage. I mean, I would honestly say probably less than 1% would I say would meet like the criteria for us calling them like a sociopath, because
the movies are made about the minority, correct? So those movies about those mastermind crazy. That's the minority of the people.
So people get like, excuse me, sorry, we give this diagnosis antisocial personality disorder, meaning like you can't function in society and don't know how to obey the rules or don't even care to obey the rules of our society. And frequently people that go to prison get that diagnosis just because they're in prison. Well, obviously you got here, so you don't care about following the laws of society.
Right.
I don't find that to always be appropriate. Again, like Bobby said, we've all done things that we shouldn't do, illegal things. I mean, I would have a hard time finding someone that hadn't ever done something that they could have been arrested for, could have gotten in trouble with the police for.
Probably couldn't have gotten at least a 30-day stint somewhere.
Yeah, and you know, while we were talking about silly things about where I grew up, it was also a place where when kids get in trouble, you don't just throw them in juvie. Like,
well, because they're rich.
Yeah, I mean, some, but there was, for sure. I mean, I grew up middle class, and you found a way to help that kid. What can we do? How can the school be helping them? How do we make sure that they don't fall through the cracks? And people that grow up in communities that don't have those type of resources or that type of mindset, that's what I find the most likely factor is to whether someone ends up in prison, honestly, is were they given a shot to remediate themselves when they had trouble?
Love.
Yeah, no, I mean, seriously.
Thanks for bringing it back, Bobby.
It's such a huge problem.
That's what it is, though. When you get down to it, I don't think there's enough love for those people when they're young. They're loved they're loved in a way that's not appropriate. That leads them down a path of creating problems also.
Definitely.
And honestly, and then once they are what we see as like other, once they've already slipped through the cracks, once they're this other part of society, criminals, then we for sure have like no caring for them. And I just don't see, I just see people, I see, other people I know that could have ended up in that position that I care about. And I just, it's no different. We're all just people trying to figure out why we're floating through space on this marble. I don't know, like I just, and some of us figure what can play the system better,
Yeah. Or have parents that, when I was a kid, my dad was in jail and stuff. But when he was 16, he got caught with a pound of weed in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Right.
And my grandpa just bailed him out because he had money. Right. And my dad did all these things throughout his childhood that were crimes. But because he came from a well-to-do family, they were just like, no, just let it go. It was just he kind of had these resources that, whereas I dated a guy that got caught boosting stereos when he was 19 with some dude that was older and went to prison.
Felony.
That's a felony. He's in huge trouble. Mm-hmm. And his parents didn't have the resources to help him out. Mm-hmm. And so he had to go to jail for that. And it's just seeing that kind of economic disparity is such a big
pay your way out of trouble.
You
can
really
pay your way out of trouble here.
You really can.
For sure.
It's and also people give you the benefit of the doubt. Oh, he's a nice kid. He comes from a good family. Just the very nature of being poor, people see as well, you're just not going to amount to anything.
Well, imagine if somebody who made $30,000 a year did what somebody like a Paul Manafort did. Imagine if he had the access and did that. That dude would be under Guantanamo Bay right now until they decide what they want to do with him.
Right.
But because Manafort's already connected to so many people and has all this money he can use to drain and have the best attorneys, he'll get to fight that. I mean, that's just on every scale, on every level, from the smallest thing to the largest, there's a disparity in how that happens just because of money.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got really far,
I
really like it. There. This is super interesting, but I
kept trying to get it back to the love thing.
I know.
I love talking about
That's Andrea's job. It's not mine. She has to bring us back. I'll go on my tangents.
Is it okay? One thing that I like to ask, and this is kind of something that I like to save kind of closer to the end, but when you guys first got together, what was there anything about falling in love when you first kind of start to feel that where you get scared? Because I feel we all get freaked out once we start what's gonna happen, what if this fails? I have these feelings what kind of in love when you first started to get together, like what were you afraid of, or like what were your misgivings about each other maybe?
Misgivings.
There's a lot of breaking down of me she had to do. I feel like she had to really kind of.
So there's this weird. If you like study psychology, there's this weird like micro analysis that goes on of yourself because you're like aware of these processes in yourself of what you're afraid of, right? The fear of loving is kind of this relinquishing of control. I'm basically saying that this person has power over me, that they are now allowed to hurt me if they don't hold up their end of our agreement or if they don't end up the way that I would expect them to. And I think we feel that loss of power and we think, oh, I'm afraid, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Because we're basically saying how this person impacts my life matters a lot to me. I'm for sure.
Well, we had an issue kind of early on. One of the things we had a thing that's kind of solidified our relationship a little early on, where we had a miscommunication. And we had a miscommunication. I was in Chicago, she was in LA, and we had this conversation about trust, and then a thing happened where I was like, wait, do we have the same conversation?
Yeah.
And she was very distraught about it, and I didn't want her to be angry or upset, but I needed to see like if we were on the same page with what we were trying to be really doing here, because I was ready to go and like date this woman and be like, all right, I'm in. If you're looking for a primary, I'm down to play this primary role, but I have to be sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Right.
Because
polyamory still has rules and still has boundaries.
Well, I think one of the things
like any type of relationship.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that happens a lot of times with monogamous relationships is people don't talk enough about what those boundaries are, right? Because even monogamous relationships, like what is cheating? Is it
people have different expectations?
Well, yeah, even when they say I'm monogamous, does that mean like you can't look at another woman? Does that mean you can't have a conversation? I used to work with businessmen who wouldn't go into the house of a couple if just the woman was home. Like they knew the family, the husband was going to be back in a minute, just the wife was home, they go, I'll wait in the car, because they didn't even want there to be a misconception of even being in the same house as a woman alone by herself. So like what version of monogamy are you even talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't think monogamous people have enough of those conversations, because I think that would solve a lot of the issues they even have with what they think cheating is and what loyalty is as they define it. So we had a very big conversation when we first met about what it meant as far as our polyamory, like what was okay, what was comfortable, what we would have to talk about, what was fine to do without having to consult with each other and see how we felt about it, and what we would definitely need to talk about. And so,
and that's an ongoing conversation that we continue to have.
How you feel about things change over time, and what you want kind of can change over time. And it's free to understand that, and understand that relationships can be fluid, and what people want over time can change, because how people's lives are going changes over time, right? Like your successes or failures may determine how you feel about where you want to live or what you want to pursue business-wise or for your career. So like you have to be willing to keep having those conversations. And so we had a little bit of a miscommunication very early on, as often happens in relationships. And I happened to be in San Francisco one weekend, and she drove up from Los Angeles to San Francisco just to meet me and stay with me for a night or two, just to like make sure that we were solid on what we were doing. And for me, I was like, I'm sold. Like, like I'm sold. I was easily about to go home. She made sure I could go home like a day later. And like, I was like, all right, cool, I'm in, like whatever. And that was in March. And then in May, she came into town and we had a conversation. And from then on, we were like, this is what we're doing. So
that's awesome.
We began to like plot and plan to take over the world.
But yeah, I mean, that fear, it's just, you think about past relationships, you think about things that have gone wrong in the past, and you don't want to repeat those same mistakes that you've made, or that you've ended up in relationships with people who make those types of mistakes. And so you're always trying to, figure out the situation. Is this person going to be someone that I can trust to have my best interest, at heart? Because I need to make sure that I'm, I need to make sure that I'm investing in something that's not going to end up hurting me in the end.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you can't know completely. Right. And so you make a choice, and you just go, it feels like a good choice to make now. And it feels like I'm not putting myself at too much risk. And hopefully Hopefully that's the case.
There's the thing about, I mean, the idea is you obviously want to make good decisions all the time, but there's also a thing about understanding that even in the times that you've made decisions that turn out poorly, if you've made what at the time you decided was the best decision based on all the information that you had, you have to be willing to forgive yourself regardless of how that turns out. You have to be willing to understand that the success was based because on that information and that the failure was based on that information.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I've had a failed marriage. I have a child. Those are all things that, like, when I look back on, I have to decide that when I made the decision to get married, to, you know what I mean, to do all those things, like, I made those based off of the information I had at that time. Now, looking back on it, are there different decisions you can? Of course there are. There always are.
But you can't change it.
One, you can't change it. And two, you have to make sure that in the future, as you make decisions, that you really weigh out and you go, okay, am I settled that this is the smartest thing I can do based off of where I am at this time? Can I feel that I can comfortably trust this person based off of everything I have, so that later on when I look back on it, I didn't go, I let this thing slide that I should have really checked out first before I got into it.
Yeah.
But people get very into like securing the thing and let things slide that they probably should have pursued for just a little bit longer to find out, like, am I sure that this is not a thing I'm concerned about with this person? And then later on, that's the thing that usually is the flare up or the problem. But they're so worried because, like, well, I'm 35 now. Well, I'm 37 now. Well, I'm 39 now. I don't have a kid. My sister's getting married. My brother's got two babies. This is a thing I want to lock down. I'm not sure if he's going to cheat on me. He's cheated before. He cheats. Like, you know what I mean? There's all these little questions. And instead of really pursuing that, they're just like, I'm 38 now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm tired of this job. I'd really like a couple, like, I need a vacation. I'd love to just get married and have a honeymoon. You know, like, I need the experience of the thing. And I understand all that, but, like, you also have to realize that you're setting yourself up for a potential issue down the road.
Right.
And
if you're overlooking problems.
And so after years and years of failed relationships with people where I did do things similar to those things because I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing, I started making decisions to then really kind of suss out situations and be honest in conversations with people, to say up front, this is what I will need to have to be able to do. This is kind of how my weekly day goes. These are the other people that I see. This is the frequency and time in which I see them. And this is kind of who they are as people. How much do you want to know about them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We kind of did, you know, I feel like we did our relationship in reverse, where some people usually have this like honeymoon period where everything's light and we don't talk about difficult stuff. And then we get into the serious part of the relationship. I feel like Bobby and I have had the opposite experience where we did all that work up front. We were long distance. We had long, really in-depth conversations about what we wanted and expectations, and figured all that stuff up out front. It was hard work. And then after we were like, okay, so we're both game, good, let's give this a shot. Now it feels, at least for me, like it's been very easy.
Yeah.
And because we made sure we had that solid foundation of you know, just sorting all that stuff through.
Well, now it's just a matter of now we are able to just remind each other of the things that we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
Instead of having to now have a conversation about it, there's now times where we go, okay, I would like to do this thing. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Instead of, you know, there's no argument, there's no discussion. It's like, if you feel this way, I understand. I trust you because we already had this conversation, right? We already know what this deal is. So you tell me what you think, and then I'm cool with that because I know that we're on the same team here.
Right.
And we just know each other that well at this point because we took all that time to like figure those things out. Where Bobby will want to go and like go out with someone else, and he'll say, "Hey, I'm thinking about going out this night. Does that work for you? Did we have anything else going on?" And if I'm like, like I kind of feel like I want to hang out with you, then it's not like I'm denying him something or that we're going to have a fight about
There's
that.
no debate over that point either. The minute she goes, I'm not sure how I feel, I just go, not a problem. I won't do that because this is my primary relationship.
Right.
So
Right.
if she feels there's something else that we had planned that she had intended on us doing, or something I said, yeah, let's do that I forgot about, like that's what we're doing then. Because
but you check in before you make plans with other people, and that kind of helps mitigate.
And I also make sure that other people know that that's a process that happens also, right? Like I don't lie to anybody else either. When I meet people, I tell them up front, I live with somebody. I've been going out with her for almost 3 years now. This is my primary partner.
Yeah.
You know, I know her family. They know my family. Like that's how this works. And, you know, we're both free to see other people if we like to. We're both free to care for other people, to have relationships with other people. But that is number one as far as like whether my time is free or available when I have free time. It's how it works. So
that's great. We're kind of like at the end, but before we leave, because you guys love each other, can you like list a few things that you love about each other?
Oh, so cute. Oh man. That's funny.
I put you on the spot really hard.
Yeah.
I'll go first. Kelsey is extremely intelligent, very, very intelligent. One of the smartest people I know, and really able to discuss the depths of things on levels that are really what locked me into her more so than almost anything else. Like that's why I was able to kind of be comfortable with a primary relationship with her, because she is that level of intelligence that I find to be so like endearing to me. Also, she lets me be me. She doesn't really question any of the craziness, the silliness, who I am, any of that stuff. She really allows me to kind of be myself. And she doesn't have an issue with me living this lifestyle because she lives it also. So like she's fine with me having feelings for other people and going on dates and seeing people repeatedly and doesn't question it or doesn't, you know, she is someone who I can trust completely. And she can go and do whatever she's doing. I don't really have to ask her a whole lot of questions. I'm not concerned about where she is when I'm not with her. I don't trust that she's making decisions that can harm us. And so I would say those are the things that I like and love about her. It's on you now.
I mean, I love so many things about Bobby, but his ambition and honestly his just like drive to like make things work, like to really be striving to do things in his life all the time, even if those things, the plans change or what he can get accomplished changes. Like he's always just, what's the next thing? Let me push forward. And that driving ambition. I feel like one of the things that I appreciate that I didn't know that I needed from someone is that, you know, this dynamic where one of the partners will be a very silly, maybe not responsible person, and then the other partner ends up being sort of a caregiver.
caretaker, yeah.
So it's usually the man is kind of sloppy, can't figure out how to do basic household things, and the woman ends up being the mom, right?
It's the worst.
And that happens in relationships over and over again. And I found that had happened to me in the past where I lost the fun, loving, like silly side of me because I was forced to be someone's like, you know, I was a person who was getting her doctorate and educated and working and doing all that stuff. And I had to be the serious person and I lost part of myself. And like with Bobby, we can have like a philosophical discussion about, I don't know, any crazy conversation in the world and topic. And then I can also be like a goofball because I can trust that he will also do some of those.
Because I make the bed and do dishes too.
Because he is a man who is not afraid to do some of those tasks that need to be done. We still got to be adult people, even though we want to be silly and goofy and play all the time. And it has allowed me to be a better balanced, like healthier person. I honestly feel like a healthier, more well-rounded, better person being with him. And that's worth more than anything I can even think of, to be totally honest. So those are a couple of things. He also has a great shaved head.
Baby head?
His baby. I've grown to love this big giant baby. I also wanted to, I don't know if you were going to prompt us this at some point, but I did say like I'm writing my dissertation on polyamory and I do have a survey right now.
If I could have one?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
if I could plug it.
Wait, these won't be released till February. Will it still be going on in February?
Yeah, it might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If it's not and the link is dead, I apologize.
And give people like your social media handles. If I know Bobby, I don't know if you have a website for your shows and your podcast, and just plug all your stuff. Go ahead.
Why don't you give them the thing first?
So for that, the survey, it is surveymonkey.com/r/J as in Juliet 8675309 because I'm amazing. So that's the handle for that. You can also find me on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, Kelsey Gruebnau. That's a really hard name to spell. Gruebnau.
Is Kelsey just KY or EY?
KELSEY. And I have links for that survey and stuff on my social media. And Bobby?
Good. You can, it's Bobby Hill. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at mocha_Jesus. Yeah, I say a lot of dumb shit on there. And I take some stupid pictures. Also, the Trusty Sidekick podcast is at Sidekick Trusty. You can go to thetrustysidekick.com. We talk about all the live action Marvel and DC shows and movies. My website is itsbobbyhill.com. And I list all my shows. I put video clips and all types of weird shit on there too. So,
and if you have trouble spelling my name, just go to Bobby's page.
Yeah, you'll find me somewhere.
Mutual friends.
Yeah. Bobby Hill Comedy. If you see a picture of a cartoon boy, that's not me. Never seen the show.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you for having us. This was fun.
It was so much fun.
This is a
Okay,
blast.
bye.
Bye.